Good Yantif. Before we begin the service, we will light two memorial candles, page 687 and 688. And then the Yantif candles. Benny? Back, two candles exactly. The first memorial candle. We like memorial candles because today is one of the 4 days of the year where we say Yizkor. The memorial candle. We light the first one in memory of all our loved ones. May their memory be a blessing. And the second one we light in memory of the soldiers of the Israel Defense Force, all those who sacrificed their lives for the sanctification of God, and all those who died in the Holocaust. May their memory be a blessing. And then we light the candles for Yantif. First we light the candles and then we say the blessing. Amen. May it be your will, eternal one, our God, and God of our ancestors, that these candles light up the pathway of return on this your holy Shabbaton, a Sabbath of complete cessation. By their light may your light be seen, and let us say, Amen. And on page 690 is the bracha for the talit, those who are wearing a talis. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kedshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehitatef b'tzitzit. Blessed are you, veiled one, our God, the sovereign of all worlds, who has made us holy with your mitzvot and commanded us to wrap ourselves amid the fringed talit. Kol Nidre is recited before Yom Kippur. Often we are confronted with moral or religious decisions where the right choice does not seem immediately clear. We make our choices as best we can despite not being entirely certain. At Kol Nidre, we look back at the year and hope our decisions have been correct. However, if they were not correct and we are now aware, we pray that we will be forgiven by whomever we may have offended and our consciences can be clear. Kol Nidre begins with the chanting of Or Zarua 3 times. Or Zarua, light is shown for the righteous. Or Zarua. Or Zarua lahatzadik u'le'yishrei lehev simcha. Or Zarua lahatzadik u'le'yishrei lehev simcha. Or Zarua lahatzadik u'le'yishrei lehev simcha. The ark is open, the Torahs are removed. And we rise. We take out all, are you both carrying? One? One could also be placed there if need be, because one is particularly heavy. Sure, yeah, in the view. You can leave that. You can leave it open. Yeah. Okay. So we just want you. Page 692. V'yeshiva shamala, v'yeshiva shamata, al da'at hamakom, v'al da'at ha'kahal, anu matirim lehitpalel im ha'avrayani. By the authority of all who congregate above and all who congregate on earth, and with permission of the omnipresent one and by consent of this assembly, we accept into our midst whoever seeks to pray, whether righteous or unrighteous. All shall pray as one community. V'yeshiva shamala, u'v'yeshiva shalmata, al da'at ha'makom, v'al da'at ha'kahal, anu matirin lehitpalel im ha'avrayani. V'yeshiva shamala, u'v'yeshiva shamata, al da'at ha'makom, v'al da'at ha'kahal, anu matirin lehitpalel im ha'avrayani. 694. Kol Nidre Service, Ushue V'charameh V'konameh V'kinuseh Din darnam ude ishtabanam ude achararimna uda asarna nafshatana miyom kipporim she'avar ad yom kipporim zem haba alei letova kulhon iharatna vehon Yahon Sharon Shvikin Shevitin Betelin Umvu Ta'alim La Sharirin Vela Kayami Midrana La Nidre Ve'esarana la esare Ushuatanam La Shavuot Kol Nidre Vesarei Ushuei Vecharamei Vekonamei Vekinusei Vechinuye Nindonam Udehishtabanam Ude Acharimna Ude Asanam Nafshatanam Miyom Kippurim She'avar Od Yom Kippurim Zem Abaleinu Letova Kulhon Icharat Naveho Kulhon Yahon Shiron Shvikim Shvikim Betelin Umvutalim La Sheririn Vela Ayami Nindrana La Nidre Vesarana la Esare Ushvuatana La Shavuot Kol Nidre Vesare Ushvueh Vecharameh Vekonameh Vekinuseh
שעבר עד יום כיפורים זה הבא עלינו לטובה כול הון איחרת נבהון כול הון יהון שרון שוויקין שוויקין בתהילין ומבוהלים לשרירים ולעיימים נדרנם נדרן ואסרן לאסרן ושבועתנם לשבועות ונסלח לכל עדת בני ישראל ולגר הגר בתוכם כי לכל העם משגגה ונסלח לכל עדת בני ישראל ולגר הגר בתוכם כי לכל העם בשגגה ונסלח לכל עדת בני ישראל ולגר הגר בתוכם כי לכל העם בשגגה סלח נא לבון העם הזה כגודל חסדך וכאשר נשאת לעם הזה ממצרים ועד הנה ושם נאמר ויאמר אדוני סלחת כי ברך ויאמר אדוני סלחת כי ברך ויאמר אדוני סלחת כי דברך. And there shall be atonement for the whole community of Israel and the stranger dwelling in their midst.
indeed for an entire people that has gone astray. Grant forgiveness then for the transgression of this people, as the abundance of your love demands, and as you have always lifted from disfavor these your people from the time of Egypt until now. And as it is told, the fount of mercy said, I grant forgiveness as you ask. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. The Torahs are returned. We ask forgiveness. One last effort to ask for forgiveness before the beginning of Yom Kippur. Before we recite the Baruch Hu and begin the evening service, we have words of greeting from our co-presidents, beginning with Eileen Kranzel. Please be seated.
Rajanta, Mishana Tova, dear members, guests, and friends. As co-president, I would like to wish you all a very happy, healthy, and prosperous New Year. As we sit here, there have been many improvements made to TBS for all of our safety. Some you can see, but many you cannot see, such as an invisible safety coating on the exterior glass surfaces, additional cameras viewing both front and back doors that transmit both sight and sound, and a much enhanced security system, and new aluminum awnings to protect us from rain, snow, and ice. This has certainly been an unusual year in so many ways. It bothers me that these things are needed for our safety. It is sad that we cannot all be here together in person, but through the magic of electronics and the hard work of a few people, the next best thing became possible. Hopefully next year we can all be together without masks and feel much safer. I was going to tell you all to have an easy fast at this time, but I came across a poem I'd like to read to you. It's a prayer for fasting by Julie Silver. Do not wish me an easy fast. Let my fast be difficult. Let me remember the hungry people of the world who have no choice, no voice. Let me understand that starvation and emptiness exist, even when there's plenty of food on the table. And if my fast causes me pain, let me sit with the pain. If my head throbs, let me handle it. If my stomach grumbles, let me welcome the sound as I welcome the shofar blast. Let my fast be the call, let my life on earth be the response. I do hope you all have an easy fast. At this time, I'd like to turn the mic over to my co-president, Shannon Farquhar.
Dear members and friends, welcome everyone, both here and virtually, to our Kol Nidre service. We are delighted to be able to welcome people into our sanctuary this year, coming together on this Yom Kippur at a time when the attacks of 9/11 have been so much in the news. I am reflecting on how much our lives have changed in the past 20 years. Terrorist threats and attacks here and abroad, new diseases to guard against, taking off our shoes before we board an airplane, and learning to navigate Zoom. We feel the need to have security in our parking lot. The agents work for a security company and tell us they have a lot of work at places of worship. However, the hatred and violence that now seems to surround us should not detract from the good in our lives, our families and friends, our synagogue community, which comes together to support every one of us in times of joy and pain. Tonight, as I look around, I am thankful for every one of you for joining us. Our community has changed many times over the years. We have lost and gained members in the natural course of life. We have survived through 50 years of existence, and many said it could not be done. Never underestimate the power of a few determined people, us here tonight, to make a difference. I'm asking you tonight to continue to support the work of our community in whatever direction the next 20 years may take us. With your participation, we can continue the work of Metz Kranzel and our co-founders and ensure a viable Jewish presence on the West Shore. May we all have an easy fast, and I now turn you over to Ira Beckham, our treasurer.
Good Yom Tov, everyone. First, I'd like to thank Jenny and Eileen and the board for leading the congregation. Under normal times, it's not an easy job. In these times, twice as hard. Everyone here should be aware that leadership has worked to squeeze every penny in expenses. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of expenses lately. Events at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh and elsewhere forced us to take actions unthinkable 30 years ago. In addition to receiving ongoing training from the Jewish Federation, the Secure Community Network, and the Upper Allen Police Department, TBS has added outside cameras and safety film for exterior windows. All of our services now have armed security guards present. None of this was free, although we were able to secure a Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency grant to cover some of the equipment and the security guards for the coming year. If that weren't enough, we are still in the middle of a 20-month pandemic. The development of an effective vaccine has allowed us to safely hold services in person, but during the year and a half we were closed, the accommodations we have made for virtual services and events incurred real costs, only a portion of which were defrayed by a grant from the Jewish Community Foundation. Beyond these two congregation-changing events, TBS continues to make necessary building and ground improvements, as noted by Jenny and Eileen. As you might expect, none of this comes free. I'd like to take this moment to thank all of our current members who, through thick and thin, have stayed with us and provided financial support. Both this year and last, we dispensed with ticketing for high holidays and extended our welcome to participate to other West Shore congregations and others in the Jewish community. In return, we have asked for donations to help defray our costs of hosting services. Many of you have generously done so. Our Kol Nidre appeal continues to be our main fundraiser. Donations such as through the appeal allow us to keep our doors open and to offer a place to be Jewish on the West Shore. It allows us to make sure every Jew who wants to be a member to join and participate regardless of the ability to pay. This has been and remains a foundational principle of TBS. These additional donations also allow us the luxury to not raise dues. Kol Nidre pledge cards were mailed out to members previously. If you have it with you and have not yet returned it, you can make a pledge here and now. If an existing tab works for you, fold it over. If you are physically here, an usher will collect it. If you are at home or need to write in an amount, please mail it into the office tomorrow or Friday, and we will tabulate your pledge. Thank you for your attention, and may your fast be light.
And again, thank you, Ira, also for designing the system that we're using now to be able to bring the different parts of our congregation together. We turn to page 697, please. I think we have a 697 here. All the vows on our lips, the burdens in our hearts, the pent-up regrets about which we brooded and spoke through prayers without end on last Atonement Day, did not change our way of life, did not bring deliverance in the year that has gone. From mountain peaks of fervor, we fell to common ways at the close of the fast. Or so often that is our tendency. Will you hear our regret? Will you open our prison, release us from shackles of habit? Will you answer our prayers, forgive our wrongs, though we sin again and again? In moments of weakness, we do not remember promises of Atonement Day. Look past forgetfulness. Take only from our hearts. Forgive us. Pardon us. And let's all try a little harder to remember. The call to prayer, page 708. We rise for the call to prayer. Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Please be seated as we continue page 710. It's a blessing about God in the midst of creation. Blessed are you, eternal one, our God, sovereign of all worlds, by whose word the evenings fall. In wisdom you open heaven's gates. With divine discernment you make seasons change, causing the times to come and go, and ordering the stars on their appointed paths through heaven's dome, all according to your will. Creator of the day and night, who rolls back light before the dark and dark before the light, who makes day pass away and brings on night, dividing between day and night. Creator of the multitudes of heaven is your name. Living and enduring God, rule over us now and always. Umavir yom umevi laila, umavdihil ben yom uven laila. Adonai tzavot shemo, El Chai v'Kayam tamidim lo. Aleinu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai. Ha'ma'arif ha'aravi. Blessed are you, Almighty One, who makes the evenings fall. Page 711, 712. A blessing about the giving of Torah as an act of love. With everlasting love, you love the house of Israel. Torah and mitzvot, laws and justice you have taught us. And so, dear one, our God, when we lie down and when we rise, we reflect upon your laws. We take pleasure in your Torah's words and in your mitzvot, now and always. Truly, they are our life and our length of days.
On them we meditate by day and night. Your love will never depart from us as long as worlds endure. Blessed are you, beloved one, who loves your people Israel. V'ahavatcha lo tasor mimenu le'olami. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael. Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod, Malchuto Leolam Vahed. Page 714, and at the Jewish home, page 6. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha v'vechtecha ha'vaderech u'shachbecha u'kumecha u'kshartam li'ohot al yadecha v'ayulatot afot beinenecha u'kafam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha. Page 719, at the Jewish home, page 181. If you truly listen to my bidding as I bid you now, loving the fount of life, your God, and serving God with all your heart and with every breath, then I will give you rain upon your land in its appointed time, the early rain and later rain, so you may gather in your corn and your wine and oil. And I will give you grass upon your field to feed your animals, and you will eat and be content. Beware then, lest your heart be led astray, and you go off and worship other gods, and you submit to them, so that the anger of the mighty one should burn against you and seal up the heavens so no rain would fall, so that the ground would not give forth her produce, and you be forced to leave the good land I am giving you. So place these words upon your heart into your life breath. Bind them as a sign upon your hand and let them rest before your eyes. Teach them to your children, speaking of them when you sit at home and when you walk upon the road, when you lie down and when you rise. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates, so that your days and your children's days be many on the land, the faithful one promised to give your ancestors, as long as heaven rests above the earth. Page 721. Vayomer Adonai al Moshe lemor, the boundless one told Moses, saying, speak to the Israelites and tell them to make themselves tzitzit, fringes, upon the corners of their clothes throughout their generations, and have them place upon the corner tzitzit, a twine of royal blue. This is your tzitzit. Look at it and remember all the mitzvot of the Eternal One, and do them, so you won't go off after the lusts of your heart, or after what catches your eye, so that you remember to do all my mitzvot, and be holy for your God. I am the faithful one, your God, who brought you from Mitzrayim to be for you a God. I am the infinite, your God. Adonai Elohem Emet. Page 725, the Jewish home, page 7 and 8. Responsively, We acknowledge as true and trustworthy that there is but one universal God, and that to God's service Israel stands eternally committed. We recognize in God the power that has enabled us to triumph over defeat, persecution, and oppression. It was God who redeemed us from Egyptian bondage and delivered us from the despotism of the pharaohs. For God wills that we be free to use our powers in holy service and be not bound to the arbitrary rule of any mortal. Whenever human rulers usurp divine authority and exploit the people, those tyrants' hearts are hardened. Their own arrogance writes their doom. Therefore, we will never be discouraged nor dismayed when unrighteous powers rise up to destroy us. Though enemy hosts pursue us, we shall remember how our ancestors were saved at the Sea of Reeds. We therefore repeat the words of triumph with which they gave thanks for their deliverance. 728. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osef ele malchutecha ra'u vanecha bokei ayam lifnei Moshe zeli anu ve'amru Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed v'nehemar kifada Adonai et Yaakov ugalo mi'ar chazak mimenu Baruch atah Adonai Gal Yisrael. Page 729 together. Help us to lie down, dear one, our God, in peace, and let us rise again, our sovereign, to life. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Decree for us a worthy daily lot. Redeem us for the sake of your great name. And enfold us in the wings of your protection. For you are our redeeming guardian. Truly a sovereign, gracious, and compassionate God are you. Guard our going forth each day for life and peace, now and always. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Blessed are you, compassionate one, who spreads your canopy of peace over all your people Israel and over Jerusalem. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha baruch atah Adonai haporeh sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol Amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. The signature piece, quote from Tanakh for Yom Kippur, page 734. And the Jewish home, page 8. Ki vayom hazeh yechaper alechem letaher etchem mekol chatotechem lifnei Adonai tithoru. Page 736, the Chatzi Kaddish. We prepare for the silent Amida. We will say a silent Amida tonight. Tomorrow, the Amida will be said out loud.
Tonight, the Amida will be said silently. The Amida will be pages 739 through 773, although don't worry, it's not all of each page. 739 through 773, because the Amida also is followed by a silent confessional. 739 to 773 for the Jewish home, pages 10 through 19. We rise for the Chatzi Kaddish in preparation for the Amida. Yitgadal v'yitgadal Shemei Rabbah V'alma divra chirutei V'yamlich malchutei V'chayechon uvyom echon Uvchayed chol Yisrael Magalav Izman Karim V'yamru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevorach Le'olam Olmei Almaya Yitbarach Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitromam V'yitnasem V'yithadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shemei Dekudesha Grechu Le'elah Mikol Bechirata V'shirata Tosh Bechata V'nechemata Damiran Me'alma V'maru Amen. Page 739 through 739. Let us rise, page 781. The beginning of a set of prayers special to tonight. Ya'alet achanunenu me'erev vayavo shavatenu miboker ve'yerahinunenu ad arev. Ale kolenu me'erev ve'avo tzidkatenu miboker ve'yerah pinyonenu ad arev. Ya'aleh Inyonenu me'erev ve'yavo slichatenu miboker ve'yerah nachatenu ad ad. May our prayers rise at evening hour, and may our cry come forth from the dawn, and may our song be pleasing through the day. Responsively, may our prayers rise at evening hour, and may our merit come forth from the day, from the dawn, and may our prayer redeem us through the day. May our searching rise at evening hour, and may our plea for pardon come at dawn, and may our sigh reach you through the day. May refuge rise at evening hour, and may it come for your sake with the dawn, and may atonement reach us through the day. May salvation rise at evening hour, and may our cleansing come forth with the dawn, and may we plead for grace throughout the day. Come forth with the dawn, and may our glory ring out through the day. May urgent prayer rise at evening hour, and may our rejoicing come forth with the dawn, and may our plea be heard throughout the day. Ya'alen katenu me'erev ve'avo elecha miboker ve'yerah eleinu ad arev. Please be seated. The middle of page 785. Haneshama lacha gufa lach kusa al amalach. The soul is yours, the body is your handiwork. Be sparing, please, to all that you have made. The soul is yours, the body yours. Fount of mercy, act in keeping with your name. We come in honor of your name, Eternal One. Please act in keeping with your name, and for the glory of your name. For you are called a God gracious and kind, and for the sake of your great name, Merciful One, may you forgive our wrongdoing, for it abounds. Page 801. Forgive us, our Creator, for we have done wrong. Grant us pardon, Sovereign, for we have transgressed, for you are good, abundant in your steadfast love. And we, just like the lump of clay held in the sculptor's hands at will, the sculptor stretches it at will, the sculptor makes it small, and so are we in your hands. And so let love preserve, look to your covenant, and do not let anger
serve. Hineka Omer Biyad Hayotzer Birtzoto Marchi Uvihiroto Mekatzer Ken Anachnu Biyadcha Chesed Notzer Labrit habet, v'yaltepen leyetzer. Hineka even, bayad hamahaster birtzoto, ochezu virtzoto, mechater. Machayel notet lebrit habet ve'altefen layetzer. Just like the axe's blade held in the blacksmith's hands, at will it is plunged into the fire, at will it is taken out. And so are we in your hands. You feed the needy and the poor. Look to your covenant and let your anger rule no more. Page 803. Together. Just like the wheel of the ship held in the pilot's hands, at will the pilot turns it on, at will the pilot turns it out. And so are we in your hands, O God who blesses and forgives. Look to your covenant, and in your mercy let us live. Just like the glass held in the glassmaker's hand, at will it is given form, at will it is melted down. And so are we in your hands. You make wrongdoing pass away. Look to your covenant, and don't let anger have its way. Just like the curtain's cloth held in the broider's hand, at will it is made to lie flat, at will it is gathered up. And so are we in your hands. O God of justice and of zeal, look to your covenant and let your anger be concealed. Just like the silver held in the smelter's hand, at will it is blended with a metal, at will it is purified. And so are we in your hands. You who give healing to all ills, look to your covenant and let not anger shape your will. Page 809. Let's read together. Sovereign God, presiding on the throne of mercy, you whose way is to be loving, you who grant forgiveness for transgressions of your people, you who readily ignore the first misdeeds, abundant in forgiveness and for our shortcomings, and quick to pardon those who have done wrong, enacting justice for all flesh and spirit, yet reluctant to requite their evil deeds in kind. You, God, who instructed us, declaring 13 attributes of God, remember us today and call to mind your covenant of 13 qualities of mercy, as you once taught your humble prophet in days of awe. For thus it is written, and the Eternal One came down amid the cloud and stood before him there and called the name of the compassionate, and the all-merciful passed by before him and declared in the giving of the second tablets. We rise. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum Vechanon, Erech Apayim, V'Rav Chesed V'Yemet, Notze Chesed Le'alafim, Nose Avon V'Fesha, V'Chata V'Naker. Adonai, Adonai, God loving and gracious, patient in abundance, in kindness and in truth, keeping kindness for 1,000 ages, forgiving sin and rebellion and transgression, making pure. V'salachta lavonenu l'chatatenu u'nechaltanu. May you forgive our sins and our wrongdoing. May you claim us as your own. Salach lanu avinu ki chatanu machalanu malkenu ki pashanu. Ki ata Adonai tov v'salach v'rav chesed l'chol kro'anu. 814. Shema kolenu Adonai Eloheinu chos v'rachem aleinu v'kabel barachamim uvratzon et tfilatenu hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva chadesh yameinu kekedem. Hear our voice, Eternal One, and accept our prayer with mercy and goodwill. Renew our days like days of old. Do not cast us away from dwelling in your presence, and do not remove your Holy Spirit from our midst. Do not cast us off as we grow old. Do not forsake us when our strength departs. Do not forsake us, gentle one, our God. Do not withdraw from us. Ki ata Adonai azartanu v'nichamtanu. Please be seated. Page 815. Our God and our ancient God, do not forsake us, do not turn us away, and do not cause us shame or nullify your covenant with us, but bring us nearer to your Torah. Teach us your mitzvot, instruct us in your ways, incline our hearts to treat your name with awe. For we are your children, and you are our creator. We are your servants, you are our sovereign. We are your community, you are our portion. Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu v'imotenu, salach lanu, mechalanu, apelanu, ki anu amecha ve'ata Eloheinu, anu vanecha ve'ata avinu, anu avadecha ve'ata Adoneinu, anu kehalecha ve'ata chelkeinu, anu nachlatecha ve'ata goraleinu, anu tzonecha ve'ata ro'einu, anu chalmecha ve'ata notreinu, anu cholatecha ve'ata yotzreinu, anu rayatecha ve'ata dodeinu, anu segulatecha ve'ata kroveinu, anu amecha ve'ata malkeinu, anu mahamirecha ve'ata mahamireinu. Page 817. Our God, our ancient God, may our prayers come before you. Hide not from our supplication, for we are not so insolent and stubborn as to say here in your presence that we are righteous and have not sinned. Aval anachnu chatanu ashamnu bagadnu, for we have done wrong. We rise, page 819. Yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Ashamnu bagadnu gazalnu dibarnu dofi. Yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Hevinu vehirshanu zadnu hamasnu tafalnu shaker. Ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 da. Yatsnu rab kizavnu latsnu maradnu niatsnu sararnu avinu pashanu sararnu kishinu horeb. Ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 da. Rashanu shichatnu tiavnu Turn to page 828. We continue with Al chet shekatan lefanecha b'imut halev, v'al chet shekatan lefanecha b'vli da'at. For the wrong we have done before you in the closing in the heart, and for the wrong that we have done before you without knowing what we do. For the wrong we have done before you, whether open or concealed, and for the wrong that we have done before you knowingly and by deceit. For the wrong that we have done before you through the prompting of the heart, and for the wrong that we have done before you through the influence of others. For the wrong that we have done before you, whether by intention or mistake, and for the wrong that we have done before you by the hand of violence. For the wrong that we have done before you through our foolishness of speech, and for the wrong that we have done before you through an evil inclination. Al chet shekatan lefanecha b'tifshut pei, ve'al chet shekatan lefanecha b'yetzer hara, v'hiyah kulam Eloha selichot, selach lanu mecha lanu kahapelanu. V'al kulam Eloha selichot, selach lanu mecha lanu kahapelanu. 8:30. Al chet shekatan lefanecha bechafat shochad, ve'al chet shekatan lefanecha belahatzon. For the wrong we have done before you in the palming of a bribe, and for the wrong that we have done before you by the expressions of contempt, and for the wrong that we have done before you through misuse of food and drink, and for the wrong we have done before you by our avarice and greed, and for the wrong that we have done before you through offensive gaze, and for the wrong that we have done before you through condescending glance. V'hiyah kulam Eloha selichot, selach lanu mecha lanu kahapelanu. V'hiyah kulam Eloha selichot, selach lanu mecha lanu kahapelanu. On page 832, Al chet shekatan lefanecha b'chlilut, ve'al chet shekatan lefanecha b'tztiat re'ah. For the wrong we have done before you by our quickness to oppose, and for the wrong we have done before you by deception of a friend, for the wrong that we have done before you by unwillingness to change, and for the wrong that we have done before you by our running to embrace an evil act, and for the wrong we have done before you by our groundless hatred, and for the wrong that we have done before you in the giving of false pledge. And for them all, God of forgiveness, please forgive us, pardon us, help us atone. V'hiyah kulam Eloha selichot, selach lanu mecha lanu kahapelanu. V'hiyah kulam Eloha selichot, selach lanu mecha lanu kahapelanu. On page 451, the ark is open. The Jewish home, page 57, page 451, the ark is open. Avinu malkeinu chatanu lefanecha. Avinu malkeinu ein lanu melech ela ata. Avinu malkeinu, we have done wrong in your presence. Avinu malkeinu chadesh aleinu shana tova. Renew for us a new year. Avinu malkeinu chafer atzat oivenu. Nullify the plans of those who seek to do us ill. Avinu malkeinu slach u'machalanu, machal v'lechol avonotenu. Forgive us. Avinu malkeinu hachzirenu b'tshuva shlema lefanecha. Cause us to return in Shuva. Avinu Malkeinu Shlach Refuah Shlema Lecholim. Heal the sick among us. Avinu Malkeinu Chatveinu B'Sefer Chaim Tovim. Inscribe us in the book of good life. Avinu Malkeinu Chatveinu B'Sefer Gula V'Yeshua. Inscribe us in the book of redemption. Avinu Malkeinu Chatveinu B'Sefer Parnasa V'Chalchala. Inscribe us in the book of abundance and livelihood. Avinu Malkeinu Chatveinu B'Sefer Zechuyot. Inscribe us in the book of merit. Avinu Malkeinu Chatveinu B'Sefer Slicha Mechila. Inscribe us in the book of forgiveness. Avinu Malkeinu Hatzmach Lanu Yeshua B'Karov. Send us redemption soon. Avinu Malkeinu Zachor Ki Afar Anachnu. Remember us, for we are but dust. Avinu Malkeinu Chamol Aleinu V'Avil Aleinu V'Tapenu. Be merciful to us and to our children. Avinu Malkeinu Aseh Leman Charagim Al Shem Kadshecha. Do so for the sake of those who died for the sake of your name. Avinu Malkeinu Aseh Leman Shemecha Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora Shenikra Aleinu. Our Avinu Malkeinu, be gracious with us and respond to us, for we have no deeds. Deal with us in righteousness and love, and help us now. Avinu Malkeinu, Vanenu Vanenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Vanenu Vanenu, Ki ein banu ma'asim. Aseh imanu tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu tzedaka v'chesed v'hoshienu. Aseh imanu tzedaka v'chesed v'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Vanenu Vanenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Vanenu Vanenu, Ki ein banu ma'asim. And together on page 773. 773, together. Master of the world, I now forgive all who have angered me or sinned against me, whether through my body, my possessions, my honor, or anything that is mine, whether by accident or by intention, knowingly or unknowingly, word or deed. Let no one be punished on my account. My God and the God of my ancestors, may it be your will that I sin no more, and that I not again do what is evil in your sight. In your great mercy, wipe away my sins without requiring my suffering. May the words of my mouth and the longings of my heart be acceptable to you, the listener, my rock and my redeemer. We close the ark, but we can continue standing for this Misha B'Av, for our community and for those in our midst, in the world, and in our lives who are in need of support and are dealing with illness or tragedy. Misha B'Av Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Limotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misha B'Av Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
seated. Last week on Erev Rosh Hashanah, I gave a sermon that could be called a Jeremiah in pilgrimage, in Puritan language. Jeremiah was a prophet in Jerusalem in the years leading up to the destruction of the temple in 586 BCE. And Jeremiah preached gloom and doom. So the Puritans called their fire and brimstone sermons Jeremiads. And in a modern sense, the content of my remarks last week, describing us at a turning point in history, looking at the state of the world, could be called a modern Jeremiad. And the responses I received told me that I captured the sense of what a lot of us are feeling, but I was asked to, quote, suggest something we can do. So I've been thinking about that all week. What can a Jewish community do in the face of all the things that are happening? And what can a small Jewish community in a position like ours do? I keep coming back to education, that the role of a community like ours is to teach from the basis of our tradition and the basis of our experience in a unique way somehow. And as I scanned through aspects of our tradition to frame a teaching, I came across a short teaching in Pirkei Avot, the Mishnah, the earliest part of the Talmud from 1800 years ago, in the name of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, al shlosha devarim ha'olam omed, al hadin, ve'al ha'emet, ve'al ha'shalom. On three things the world stands: on justice, on truth, and on shalom. This teaching from our tradition can provide a frame for our response in our time and place to problems of our day, starting first with the value of emet, truth. We have a crisis of truth in our country today and in the world, as in lots of people are not speaking it. Lots of people are not speaking truthfully. To speak of this value, we have to address the nature of knowledge and integrity, the nature of scientific knowledge and respect for science. Scientific knowledge is always dynamic, always changing. It follows evidence. So by definition, it is open to change. If it is not open to change, it is not in keeping with the scientific process of observation, hypothesis, experimentation, observation, which is why our understanding of the pandemic we are going through and its prescribed responses has been changing. It's not because people are lying. It's because the knowledge is changing as the evidence suggests change. And this is why scientists have been limited in what they can say about climate change in the past, and why scientists are getting more and more strident in their claims today. The observations are providing more evidence, and they are following the evidence. People who say they don't believe in climate change clearly have no idea what they're talking about. No one believes in climate change. Responsible people look at the observed evidence as it evolves and decide rationally that the probabilities are getting very high, that we are putting ourselves at greater risk. So high that immediate action is warranted. It's not about blindly believing anything. Similarly, with evolution or the Big Bang, nobody believes these things. And those who say that they do not believe them simply do not understand the nature of scientific knowledge. These are evidence-based theories that help explain so much about the way the world works that they make very good operative assumptions. But a true scientist would never stake a claim on these theories as eternal truths. That would not be science. And those religionists who claim that scientists are proclaiming these or anything as eternal truths are simply practicing bad theology, because they are basing their own claims on false assertions about what others are claiming. False assertions based on ignorance, and ignorance does not make for good theology. So also with the nature of religious knowledge. Religious knowledge is never simple.
never so simple as opening up a book and looking at the words that are there. Religious texts are refractions of reality into words. Even as the words are being voiced and written, they are already interpretations of the experience that is being reflected. Whenever you read the Torah, you have to ask, what is the message? And what is simply part of the ancient Near Eastern society that the message was expressed within? Just because ancient Near Eastern society included sacrifices and slavery does not mean that the Torah message is that we should have these today. Yet there is a message of justice and compassion being expressed against the background of those ancient institutions. Every religious tradition understands that religious texts can hold meaning on many different levels. It is commonly understood that culture impacts the interpretation of these texts. We need to bring out as well that culture has impacted the construction of these texts. In Jewish tradition, the written word is always the first word, never the last. The Torah is our central saga. It tells us who we are and what we're committed to. So it's always our starting point, but it's not the last word. We are always tasked with the question, what does it mean? And what does it mean for today? This is one reason why whenever I hear the phrase, no creed but the Bible, I always roll my eyes. A text is always wrapped in a tradition. The Torah never tells you what an aleph is and never tells you what a bet is. It doesn't tell you how to read it. You have to look at the tradition outside of it in order to even begin to read it. The same with the phrase spiritual but not religious. Where culturally have we ever learned anything about what the word spiritual means? All descriptions of what we mean by spiritual are cultural and come down to us mostly through our religious traditions. Anytime we describe any of what we are experiencing as spiritual, we are using words shaped ultimately by our historical religious traditions. And when we translate any of that experience into a mandate for action, it is filtered through the cultural legacy of our religious traditions. Spiritual, but not religious, is like poetry without language. At best, it's white noise, a continuous tone, not even music per se, because all musics of the world exist in some sort of tonal and rhythmic structure, which are all shaped by culture. You cannot hold religious knowledge outside of cultural structure because we are always going to interpret our religious experience through the lens of our cultural experience. And something that we have to teach the world around us is the nature of cultural diversity, because in many ways we represent cultural diversity. More than anything, Americans need to know how much they don't know. Americans need to understand that there is something called cultural diversity, and cultural diversity is okay. It is beautiful even, because it extends our ability to see things in the world, to see what is right in front of us. To illustrate the problem, I often say that if more Americans had known where Iraq was before we went there, we wouldn't have gone there. Americans are so deficient in cultural knowledge and so deficient in knowledge of their own history, not to mention the knowledge of other people's cultures, that it becomes a national security threat. We don't understand the world we are trying to lead. As a nation, we likely would not have made the mistakes we did make in the past 20 years or 50 years if we had known anything about the cultures we were moving into. As Jews, we can be an example of this issue to our neighbors. We are living right among them. Many of our neighbors assume we are all part of one Judeo-Christian tradition. For the most part, they have no idea who we are. The more we get them to understand that, the better everyone will be. They may be less likely to make assumptions in the future that everyone is like them. We also have to teach respect for education and learning. One aspect of our Jewish cultural and religious traditions is very strong respect for education and learning. Respect for education and learning is not a universally accepted value in America. That is why you often hear politicians and pundits regularly berating the educated elite, as if there is something sinful and arrogant about valuing study and being educated. Learning is set up to be some sort of betrayal of the common American man or woman. How have we gotten to the point where ignorance is made out to be so noble? The truth of the matter is, much of America was always in that place. Many American religious traditions have historically been opposed to education, especially among the clergy. Education was depicted as something that got in the way of straightforward inspiration. At best, education was a distraction, something superfluous. At worst, it was something that caused the educated to substitute their own minds for the mind of God, which is why some American religious traditions to this day proudly declare themselves to be anti-intellectual. A shocking number of American churches these days are returning to the practices of a century ago of having non-educated clergy, which is why things that so many clergy persons say these days sound so uneducated. Judaism is a tradition that has always valued education and study. Study has long been seen as a way of gaining greater understanding of the divine and of the ways of the divine, of mitzvot, ground rules on how to live, on what God wants of us, on how to be a better partner with God, and how to be a mensch. In the past 200 years, this emphasis in our culture on study has been translated into the realm of secular study, which accounts for the outsized impact Jews have had on so many fields of the arts and sciences, technology and leadership, since the time we have been allowed by the Western world to become participants in society, which only has its beginnings in the French Revolution, by the way. We can only wish that the bulk of our people had retained the same sense of dedication to the study of our own Jewish tradition as we have held for the study of secular studies. We and the entire world would have been better off, especially when it comes to the fields of ethics and understanding of the nature of religious knowledge. And there is one more thing that must be said, one more thing that we must advocate for under the category of emet, truth, and that is integrity. When we emphasize emet, truth, we must insist that people actually tell the truth. Too many politicians and pundits these days are actually making statements they know to be false. It is one thing if people are simply mistaken, are saying things that are false because they think they are true. That can be an honest mistake, which anyone can commit accidentally. But too many people are simply stating bald-faced lies that they know to be lies. We must teach the nature of truth and the importance of truth-telling. That much for emet. Now, Dean, justice. And I won't go on as long about either of them. There are many aspects of justice which are called out to be addressed in society today, and which Jewish tradition addresses directly. And as some of you know, the Talmud is divided into 6 sections, each called orders. Of these 6 orders, one entire order, Nezikin, is dedicated to questions of economic, social, legal, and environmental justice. Tzedek, tzedek tirdof, the Torah says, justice, justice you shall pursue. And you shall not oppress the widow, says the Torah. The widow, the orphan, the stranger in your midst, the 3 most vulnerable classes of people in society. Because you too were strangers in Egypt. Issues of justice, therefore, are centered at the core of our identity as the people of Israel, who was liberated from bondage in Egypt in our earliest beginnings. We are confronted daily with issues of economic justice, workplace justice, employment justice, education access and fairness, racial justice, civil justice, the right to vote and to have a meaningful vote, protections against discrimination on the basis of religion, ethnicity, sex, gender, sexual orientation. In Pennsylvania, as you may know, there still exists the unlimited right to discriminate against people on the basis of sexual orientation for any reason. environmental justice, healthcare justice, the right to safety and safe neighborhoods, justice in the criminal system, immigration and the right to asylum, which is an internationally recognized human right, but not so much in America. Note how in America we almost never talk anymore about human rights, except as to how they apply outside of the United States to other countries. In America, we talk primarily about the rights of citizens, American citizens. Pay attention and note the language that is used and the legal arguments that are made. We are talking about the rights of citizens, but no one else in America, it seems, has full human rights, not even the right to due process. In America, for example, if you are a legal non-citizen and you get convicted of a felony, which these days is easier and easier to do, after you serve your sentence, you by law must be deported to the country of which you are a national. But if you are here in America because your native country is a place where your life would be in danger, you are held in administrative detention behind bars for 6 months, at the end of which your case is reconsidered, and if your case is not changed, you are put away behind bars for another 6 months. At the end of which your case is reconsidered, and if your case has not changed, you are put away behind bars for another 6 months. At the end of which, if your case is reconsidered, and if your case has not changed, you are put away behind bars for another 6 months. At the end of which, forever, in the United States, because there is no recourse in the law to get out of this cycle, in the land of the free and the home of the brave. The Torah speaks strongly about the obligations of the powerful to the powerless and of the rich to the poor, about the need for justice in criminal proceedings and the need not to oppress the stranger among us, and about not forgetting the dignity even of the convicted. One of those Torah institutions meant to maintain a state of justice in society is the Shemitah year, the sabbatical year. And this year, 5782, is a sabbatical year, by the way. The Torah describes how the people of Israel every 7th year were to observe something like a Sabbath year for the land, in which the land was to be given a rest from planting and harvesting. Also, debts were to be forgiven. And then every 50th year, following the 49th year, 7 times 7, there is a Jubilee year, when slaves are freed and land is returned to previous owners. All of this works together as an economic reset to prevent what we see happening over and again in the course of American history, the non-productive and morally corrupting enormous gaps of income and wealth between the rich and the poor. The Jubilee year begins every 50th year with the blast of the shofar on Yom Kippur. In describing this moment, the Torah says, "You shall proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof." Intriguing, these words from the Torah describing an institution of economic justice were lifted by English colonists in Pennsylvania and in the 1750s and placed on what we now call the Liberty Bell. You shall proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. And that bell came to celebrate a version of political liberty, which, in the name of unrestricted property rights, excludes the very form of economic justice the original verse was meant to uphold. But one would have to uphold the value of study and education in order to appreciate this irony. As members of the Jewish community, however, and representatives of Jewish tradition here in central Pennsylvania, one way for us to respond to the pressing issues of our day is to make it our mission to engage in interfaith education among our neighbors. We could speak strongly to the need for justice, especially among those parts of the conservative world which seem to speak most highly of the Bible, but seem also to have the greatest difficulty in actually finding ways to live out its teachings. And shalom. Emet, din, shalom. Truth, justice, Shalom. Last but not least, not at all least, we could make it our mission to teach about the value of shalom. Shalom in its simplest form means peace. And it shares a root with the word shalem, meaning complete, wholeness. This is about the peaceful coexistence of all the many different parts. In a word, harmony. In America today, we are a very divided country, largely because of the absence of emet, truth, and deen, justice. But it is also true that the lack of shalom among us in America and the world contributes to the continuation of falsehoods and injustice. All very often, Americans no longer trust each other. We live in different worlds with different narratives. Shalom is a key to rebuilding trust, to finding points of commonality upon which a new common effort for building up society can begin. Shalom can help us heal the divide between people in our society so that we can address the issues of what is true and what is false, and what is just and what is not. And because there are always people who have their own reasons to perpetuate division among us, we must be on watch for purposeful efforts to disrupt the shalom of our land, purposeful efforts to create conflict. As a Jewish community, we must be part of an effort to teach the values of shalom, emet, and deen for our sake and for the sake of others. While we are a small community, our Jewish community, and also we at Temple Beth Shalom, we must be engaged in proportion to our size. For as Jews, we are blessed with one thing, or cursed, depending on how you look at it. We have greater than average visibility. Many people seem to think that we are more numerous and more highly resourced than we actually are. That is partly because of all the churches around us. One friend of mine, a brilliant scholar and friend of the Jewish people, who used to teach Hebrew Bible at a nearby Christian seminary, said to me at one time, "Just think, Carl, every Sunday, Christians gather in churches all over the world and talk about Jews." And when I said that, I actually found that to be scary. He said, "You should." He did not mean that as a threat, but rather as an acknowledgement of a cultural fact that he himself has long been concerned about. We Jews feature strongly in the imagination of our Christian neighbors. We always have, and probably always will, as long as Christianity persists. Because Christians read their Bibles, in their Bibles, about Romans, apostles, angels, and Jews, but they never see Romans, apostles, or angels. And then suddenly you come walking down the street, a Jew. Whether they realize it or not, you are probably playing in their minds as a character right out of the Bible. I have felt this at least many times. For us, is that a curse or a blessing? Probably unavoidably both. So we owe it to ourselves and to others to get busy reinforcing it as a blessing. Shalom becomes an imperative. It is about shalom bayit, peace in the house, peace in the nation, bridging divides, dialogue. Not without emet and deen, however, truth and justice. We need to bring strong opinion about emet and deen. But in the name of shalom, we need to listen, and we need to encourage everyone to love, to feel compassion for each other, especially since in Jewish tradition, teaching laws of life itself is an act of love. Emet, deen, and shalom become an ultimate measure as to whether we ourselves are reading our own tradition appropriately. What we are doing, does it lead to shalom, inner peace and outer peace? Does it lead to deen, justice in all its manifestations? Does it lead to emet, respect for truth? The one thing we can do in response to the problems facing our society today is to engage in education with our neighbors on the basis of Al Shlosha Devarim Ha'olam Omed. On three things the world stands. Al Hadin, the Al Ha'emet, the Al Ha'Shalom. Upon justice, upon truth, and upon Shalom. And we can use our old Torah, Ha'atika, I call it, the ancient one. Our fourth Torah, the one that is not kept in our ark up here. We can take it to places and show it and hold conversations about Emet, Din, and Shalom. Our oldest Torah scroll is missing various letters, so it is not a complete kosher scroll. It is likely beyond repair to that extent. So it can be treated a bit more lightly, but still with respect. We can offer to bring our old scroll for a visit anywhere, so people can see the inside of the scroll. And we can talk about the Torah and its traditions of ongoing study, about avodah, devotional activity, gimilut chasadim, deeds of kindness, and we can use the lessons of Jewish history to illustrate the Torah's teachings of Emet, Din, and Shalom. And we can talk about the experience of our own families in the past 2 or 3 or 4 generations as religious minorities. And we can ask them to talk about the experience of their families as well, because the stories of most families in America illustrate the need for emphasizing truth, justice, and peace. In our own small way, in our own time and place, we can engage the problems of our society today with Torah by bringing Torah to our neighbors, both figuratively and literally. We have something to teach, just as we also always have things to learn. We are privileged to be positioned because of our tradition in a place of high visibility. That ability to be seen and heard presents itself as a mitzvah, an obligation, as well as an opportunity. We should not shirk it in the coming year. May we all be written and sealed for a good, happy, healthy, sweet New Year. Shana Tova. Let us resume immediately with Aleinu. Aleinu, Kaddish, Hachat, Alfi, and Nidgal. Aleinu is on page 1201. Page 85 in the Jewish home. 1201. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon ha'kol latet gedula le'otzeh breshit shenatan lanu Torah ha'temet v'chaye olam nata betochenu v'anachnu torim u'mishachadim u'modim לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל ושכינתו זו בגבהי מרומים הוא אלוהינו אין עוד אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו ככתוב בתורתו וידעת היום והשבות אל לבבך כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. Page 1206. And so we put our hope in you, the eminence, our God, that soon we may behold the full splendor of your might, and see idolatry vanish from the earth, all material gods be swept away, and the power of your rule repair the world. As it is written in your Torah, Adonai Yimloch le'olam va'ed. The Eternal One will reign now and forever. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol ha'aretz. Bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad. U'shemo echad. Page 1216. Be seated for the moment. 1216. In reciting the Kaddish, we affirm our awareness of holiness in our world. Much of our experience of divine goodness, grace, and love has come to us through those whose lives have touched our own. We invoke the transcendent power of love and caring as we sanctify God's name. Today, in particular, we're remembering the Yortzites of Elke Kranzel, the mother of Morris Kranzel, Sonia Hillman, the mother of Arnold Hillman, Ted Barbalo, the brother of Lillian Kranzel, Ray Rosenberg, the daughter of Rhoda Shore, Ethel Barish, mother of Stan Barish, Rose Bell, the sister of Sonny Bowers, Melvin Rothstein, the brother of Arlen Rothstein, Phyllis John Paul, the sister of David Goldberg, Fanny Rosette, the mother of Honey Avis, Louis Weinshell, the husband of Sonny Bowers, and Norman Berg, the father of Steve Berg. And we continue to remember Sharon Ben, sister-in-law of Eileen Kranzel, Mike Sokolow, the husband of Denny Serrata, Richard Blasberg, the uncle of Pam Eisenhower and the brother of Arlene Rose, Cheryl Ann Hillman Pelletier, the sister of Arnold Hillman, Sanford Beckerman, the uncle of Ira Beckerman, Bonnier Geller, the cousin of Mort Rubenstein and of CJ and Lisa Four, Dr. John C. Stoner Jr., the husband of Marilyn Kranzel Stoner, Alexander Chuchi, the nephew of Linda Reese and Ira Beckerman, Hedvig Newman Richter, a former member of Temple Beth Shalom, Darlene Kranzel, the wife of Jack Kranzel, and Rose Eisenhower, the mother of Jim Eisenhower. Are there others?
Wayne Waters.
Wayne Waters, your husband. Memory of these and others who've gone before us. Page 1216. Rise. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba. Yama divra fruke v'yamlik mafuke. V'chayechon v'yomechon v'chaye d'chol beit Yisrael. Ba'gala v'zman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevarach le'olam al me'almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitrumam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitbalal shemei d'kudisha turichu. Le'ela le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechamata damiran v'yama v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama Rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Ose shalom bimroma hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru. Amen. Okay, page 1241. Please be seated. Page 1241.
is traditional to include Psalm 27 in every service this time of year. So we sing one line, page 1241. Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai, o ta'avakesh. Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai, o ta'avakesh. Shifti beveit Adonai, kol yamei chayai. Shifti beveit Adonai, kol yamei chayai. Lachazot b'noam b'noam Adonai, ulvahaker bechalo. Lachazot b'noam b'noam Adonai, ulvahaker bechalo. Announcement.
Services will commence tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. The afternoon service
The afternoon service is
at 2,
at 2. Mincha and Yisber.
right? Yeah, we'll commence at 2, so probably there'll only be a very short time in between the two.
Did that so people wouldn't be going back and forth. We would be here for a service at 10, about
1
1, and then from 2
until probably what, 3:30?
to 4,
Okay.
and then people go home, and then
Meila is
on Zoom
only on Zoom,
at
7. And then the, not Friday of this week, but next Friday will be a Shabbat and Sukkot service. The 24th, only on Zoom?
I believe so.
Only on Zoom. I think so, yes.
The Gemar Chatima Tova, may you be written and sealed for a good year. Yigdal, page 1226. Yigdal Elohim chai ve'yishtabach, nimtza v'yenet el metziuto, echad v'en yachid כייחודו נעלם וגם אין סוף לאחדותו, אין לו דמות הגוף ואינו גוף, לא נערוך אליו קדושתו, קדמון לכל דבר אשר נברא, ראשון ואין ראשית לראשיתו, הינו אדון עולם וכל נוצר, יורא גדולתו ומלכותו, שפע נבואתו נתנו אל אנשי סגולתו ותפארתו, לא קם בישראל כמו שעוד נביא, ומביט את אמונתו, תורת אמת נתן לעמו על יד נביאו נאמן ביתו, לא יחליף האל ולא ימיר דתו, לעולמים לזולתו, צופה ויודע צאתנו, מביט לסוף דבר בקדמתו, גומל לאיש חסד כמפעלו,
ייתן לרשע רע כרישתו, ישלח לקץ ימין גאולתו, לפדות מחכה קץ ישועתו. חיים מחכה אל ברוב חסדו, ברוך יודע שם תהילתו. חיים מחכה אל ברוב חסדו, ברוך יודע שם תהילתו. שנה טובה.